Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a story today that's, well, let's just say it pushes the boundaries of what we think we know about the Bible. We're talking about a woman, Sarah, who some believe never actually died.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that really makes you stop and think.
So, to start us off, can you give us the basics? Who is this Sarah, and where does she fit into the grand scheme of things?
Well, she's got some pretty important family connections, granddaughter of Jacob.
You mean the Jacob who wrestled with the
Oh,
ant?
that's the one.
Yeah.
And her father was Asher, one of the 12 sons of Jacob. So, yeah, she comes from a pretty significant lineage.
Okay, so she's got the family tree, but honestly, when I picture those biblical genealogies, it's mostly men. Long lists of names. Why does Sarah get a special mention?
It's true. Oh, and women don't always make it into those family trees, so the fact that she's there at all is pretty interesting. But what really makes her stand out are her actions, the things she did.
You talk about those incredible acts of kindness she's known for, right?
Exactly. And there's one story that really highlights her character. It involves her grandfather, Jacob, and some news about Joseph that could have been devastating.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Remind me what was happening with Joseph at this point in the story.
Well, Joseph, Jacob's favorite son, remember he'd been sold into slavery by his brothers. Jacob had been grieving for years, convinced that Joseph was dead. And then the truth comes out. Joseph is alive and well in Egypt. Problem is, Jacob's a very old man at this point, and everyone's terrified to tell him. They think the shock could kill him.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a tricky situation. Can't keep it from him forever, but how do you break the news without risking his health?
This is where Sarah steps in. She was known for her musical talent, played the harp beautifully, and she knew her grandfather, knew he was a gentle soul. So she decides to use music to kind of ease him into the truth about Joseph.
So she plays him a song. What kind of song?
Not just any song, she composes a beautiful and really clever ballad about Joseph's life in Egypt. Even includes details about his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And here's the really amazing part. She weaves in all this Hebrew wordplay, rhyming, and subtle connections between the words for Egypt, that's Mitzrayim in Hebrew, and Manasseh and Ephraim. It's a fantastic example of how language and music can work together to convey sensitive information on a much deeper level.
She sounds incredible, so thoughtful and talented. So she's playing this song, dropping these hints about Joseph. What happens? Does Jacob figure it out?
He does. Slowly but surely, it starts to dawn on him. And when his sons finally confirm that Joseph is actually alive, he's overwhelmed with joy, not grief. A truly beautiful moment of family reunited.
I bet Jacob was beyond grateful to Sarah for her wisdom and compassion in handling such a delicate situation.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he gives Sarah a special blessing, wishing her a long and blessed life. And, as we'll see, it seems that blessing may have carried some real weight.
Yeah, this blessing from Jacob really sets Sarah's story on a unique path. It's like it triggers a whole chain of events that echo through generations.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What happens next? Well, let's fast forward a few centuries to the Exodus. The Israelites escaping slavery in Egypt.
Right. Moses parting the Red Sea, one of the most famous stories in the Bible.
Exactly. But before they could leave Egypt, there was this crucial promise they had to keep. Remember Joseph? The one who ended up ruling Egypt?
Yes, he saved Egypt from famine, rose to power, a real rags to riches story.
Right. Well, before he died, Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath. They had to take his bones back to Canaan when they finally left Egypt, the land promised to their ancestors.
Okay, so now we've got a bit of a problem. Generations have passed since Joseph died. Wouldn't it be hard to find his burial place after all that time?
You're spot on. After centuries of slavery, memories fade, records are lost. No one seems to know where Joseph was buried. Except, of course, for Sarah.
Wait, really? She remembers after all those years?
The Midrash tells us Sarah, blessed with an exceptionally long life, was the only one who remembered. She knew Joseph was buried in a submerged tomb in the Nile River.
Wow, that's an incredible detail. Almost too perfect. Like something out of a legend. But burying someone in a river? That's pretty strange, isn't it?
Might seem odd to us, but it actually fits with some ancient Egyptian burial practices. The Nile was sacred to them, a life-giving force, so burying important people in its waters had symbolic meaning.
So Sarah, this woman who's seemingly lived through centuries of history, becomes the key to fulfilling Joseph's final wish. What an amazing legacy.
Absolutely. She's a bridge between generations, a living symbol of memory and continuity. The Midrash paints her as a respected leader, a matriarch who kept the faith alive during such difficult times.
It makes me think about all the unsung heroes throughout history, people who may not have been in positions of power, but whose actions played a vital role in how things unfolded.
Yeah, I like that. It challenges us to think about what we consider important or influential. Sometimes the quietest voices, the smallest actions, have the biggest impact.
Speaking of impact, there's another fascinating part of Sarah's story. The Midrash says she predicted the coming of a deliverer, someone who would say a specific phrase, Bashad Yetzavani, meaning I have been commanded in Hebrew. And guess who utters those exact words?
Moses, when he stands up to Pharaoh demanding the release of the Israelites.
Oh wow, that gives me chills. This prophecy adds a whole new dimension to Sarah's story. It implies a profound spiritual connection, a level of insight beyond the ordinary.
Definitely makes you think about the role of prophecy in the Bible and how it reveals God's plan through chosen individuals. In Sarah's case, it really reinforces the idea that she's an extraordinary figure marked by wisdom and a connection to the divine.
And now we come to the heart of the mystery surrounding Sarah, her death. Or rather, the fact that the Bible doesn't mention it at all.
That's right. This is where things get even more interesting. We need to dig into some of the nuances of Jewish thought about death and what it means to transcend this earthly life.
Okay, lay it on me. Unpack this mystery. Okay, so we've seen that the Bible doesn't say anything about Sarah's death. What are we supposed to make of that? Just an omission, or is there something deeper going on?
This is where it gets really important to understand how Jewish thought views death. It's not always seen as a simple event like a hard stop at the end of life.
You're saying there could be different ways to die?
Kind of. For most people, the end of life means facing the angel of death. Malach Hamavet, it's called in Hebrew. That's the traditional understanding of how death happens.
Right, that makes sense. But what about Sarah? Where does she fit in?
Well, the Midrash, remember, it's full of stories and interpretations. It offers a different perspective on Sarah's passing. It suggests that she, like a few other figures in the Bible, may have actually bypassed the angel of death.
You're talking about people like Enoch and Elijah, right? The ones who were taken by God.
Exactly. And it's important to remember, taken doesn't necessarily mean a physical transportation. It's more like a different kind of transition, one that goes beyond how we usually understand death.
So you're saying Sarah might have experienced a different kind of passing, something we can't really grasp with our normal understanding of death.
It's definitely one way to interpret it, and it really makes you wonder about the nature of life and death, the possibility of transcendence.
Makes you wonder what happened to her. Did she go to some higher spiritual realm? Did she keep living on earth somewhere hidden?
The Midrash leaves it open to interpretation, encourages us to think about the possibilities. Some people believe she joined those righteous souls who exist beyond our perception. Others imagine her still on earth, maybe in a hidden paradise, her wisdom available to just a few.
It's like a mystical story, a woman who lives beyond the limits of time and death. Her story reminds us about the power of faith and goodness.
It is powerful. And it reminds us that there are mysteries in the world we may never fully understand, depths of spirituality we can only glimpse. Maybe that's what makes Sarah's story so compelling. It invites us to embrace the unknown, to realize that there are forces at play beyond our grasp.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sarah's enigmatic life, the woman who might never have died, it's worth asking, what can we learn from her story?
One big takeaway for me is this. Our actions, even those that seem small, can ripple outward and affect things far beyond our lifetimes. Sarah's life was full of kindness, compassion, and deep faith. Those qualities, those choices she made, they shaped her own destiny, but also touched the course of history.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have the potential to leave a legacy that outlasts our physical existence. Our choices, how we treat others, the values we hold dear, these things have a lasting impact on the world around us.
And maybe, just maybe, like Sarah, we might even transcend the limits of time and death in ways we can't even fathom.
It's a beautiful thought to end on. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey through Sarah's story. I hope it sparked your curiosity and left you pondering life, death, and the power of a life well lived.